So for today's Semen Retention Sunday, I want to talk about how to transcend addictions, desires, and intoxications, and what it really means to do these things. Because oftentimes we don't really know what an addiction is or what we have as addictions until we try to get rid of it. And specifically in this video, I want to talk about the addictions of getting dopamine hits from women on semen retention. You know, getting some kind of attention from women is a dopamine hit to one degree or another. And then you also have drugs, alcohol, etc. But we're going to mostly hit on PMO, which for anybody that is not aware of what PMO is, it is corn. Won't say the actual word on YouTube here, but corn, masturbation, and orgasm. Now, if you support content like this, go ahead and give a like or a comment on this video if you want to see more content like this as well. Now, obviously, I'm out here in nature today, and this is one of the ways that you can free yourself from addictions. I like to go here by the river, and I like to take a walk. There's a nice little bridge behind me as well, you can see. And there's probably, you can hear the birds chirping as well, which I'm surprised there's actually birds around because most of the leaves have fallen and most of the birds have gone away for the winter time here. But, you know, it's good to get out in nature. It's good to get out and ground yourself in nature and ground yourself in existence, because that's really what the semen retention is all about at the end of the day. It's about connecting more to ourselves. It's about connecting more to who we really are. And in the Bible, it says in 1 Peter 5, I believe, it says something along the lines of, "Be sober and be vigilant, for your adversary the devil is like a roaring lion, seeking to whom it may devour." And what this is really saying is that you don't get to be vigilant without being sober. And semen retention can help you break these addictions that you have. Because what it is it's harnessing your life essence. Think about this. Think about the time in which status or money or power wasn't really a thing. Think about to our most tribal states of consciousness as human beings. We now live in a society where we're very cultured and socialized, and we don't really have, honestly, I would say, a luxury of being able to know how to hunt or know how to gather food or anything like that. But think about what it would be like to be in these tribal days, and think about, as a man, what would determine you to be the alpha? What would determine you to be the most powerful person? And a lot of times people will say, well, you're probably the biggest or the strongest or whatever. And that, you know, you have the biggest stick. And that could be true. But there's also, for example, there's gorillas or chimpanzees, those tribes, that it's oftentimes it's not the isolated male, but the one that is able to communicate with all different kinds of people or chimpanzees or chimps in the tribe. And it's the one that can relate most, it seems like. And so a lot of the times in these chimp tribes or these gorilla tribes, the alpha is not really always the one that can be the strongest. It's the one that can provide the most care, supervision, and wisdom, in a sense. And it's also the case that these chimps are likely going to be higher testosterone because they're not just trying to, well, violence is a potential capacity for testosterone levels, like capacity for violence, that is. But it's also the case that the more connected you are to yourself, it's possible to have more testosterone. And what semen retention does is it allows you to connect more with your biological self, your psychophysiological self. And so the more that you do this, the more that you retain, the more life force and testosterone you're going to build. Now, this leads me into the addiction of female attention that men have. And sometimes men don't even develop this until they get on retention. They don't realize how much they like female attention until it's there. And believe me, like I've been there. I know what that's like. And even to this day, there's still times where I have to really discipline myself to make sure that I'm not entertaining these seductive spirits. Because when you do retain your semen, you're absolutely 100% going to have attraction from women. In fact, this sounds kind of ludicrous, but I don't even know what it's like to be in the friend zone anymore. Like, I don't know. Like, there's no woman that's putting me in the friend zone at this point. Like, they all just, it seems like they all just want sex. It's like, wow, this person just so on his grind. He's just going about his business. He's minding his own business. He doesn't really talk to anybody. Well, now he's mysterious. Now I want to know everything about him. And it's not really like I'm actively choosing to be mysterious or fiercely independent. It's just that I know what people are like, man. I know what people are like in this day and age. I know that a lot of the times people do not have your best interests at heart. And I know women will be flirting with guys 5 minutes before they start talking to you and acting like you're the only man for them. And so I'm not stupid. And this has literally been the case where there have been women that are with their boyfriends saying, "Oh, I love you so much, bye." And the boyfriend leaves, and then the women start to stare at me and start giving me these googly eyes like I'm a piece of meat. And it's crazy. It's absolutely insane. And believe me, if I didn't have morals and values, I would be out there around the town, around the community a lot. And this is not to say like, this is not like to brag or anything like that. It's more so to understand that when you start to really develop principles and values, that's actually attractive because a lot of people don't have that. And so when you're able to actually stick to your word, you're able to actually stick to who you are and what you're about, that's going to be attractive. But the obstacle in the addiction to overcoming female attention is going to be to stick to those boundaries and to have those boundaries to begin with. I recommend most men that I have consultations with, and just people in general that watch these kinds of videos, to adopt the following principles for being in relationship with women. Number one is God first. If she doesn't have God first, then she's not going to be able to understand how to put the relationship first. Because what you sacrifice is for the relationship when you're in a relationship with someone. You sacrifice for the relationship. As Joseph Campbell said, marriage is an ordeal. And what that means is that I'm not necessarily saying marriage in the modern day sense. I'm meaning marriage in the biblical sense, where marriage and sex is the consummation of marriage. So that's why I advocate for men to be very careful when you're choosing someone to be with. And I also recommend that you do not engage in intercourse unless you're planning to be in a long-term relationship with this woman. Why else would you do it? Otherwise, you're committing fornication or adultery, and you're just going to build a soul tie that is not going to help you in the long run. And so so God first is the first principle. Number two is she will not get in the way of finances. I cannot tell you how important it is for you to understand this as a man. If she tries to get in the way of your finances, she has to go. Now, I'm not saying that you can't, once you're in a relationship, with the woman, you can't treat her as such. Like, you can't treat her to things. It's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that you shouldn't have to give her some cash in order to just talk to her. Like, some of these women have said that that's what they do. They put their Cash App. They throw you your Cash App. And that's that's just crazy. It's crazy. The entitlement and the sense of superiority that they have is just insane. And if more men just stopped adhering to these, we wouldn't have that kind of issue, I don't think. Because now women do need to take accountability for everything going on, but it's also the fact that men need to start having and staying to their standards. And I genuinely believe we wouldn't have been in such a deep hole as we are now if it weren't for that. Number 3 is she will not take you for granted. If she starts to take the relationship for granted, it's a wrap. Number four is she will not, or she will be vocal when it comes to expressing her wants or needs. Now, a lot of the times women are very covert in what they want and what they need from you. And yes, they sometimes expect you to be mind readers, men, and it's just the way it goes for most modern women out here. But if she's not vocal about her wants and needs, then you're going to be in a standstill. Like, you're not going to know what to give exactly. Now, there are, of course, standards of what you bring to the table, and there should be standards of what she brings to the table. But those are the 4 main principles that I would say that you can put under your belt whenever you're communicating with women in a romantic sense. And that's how to overcome the addiction of female attachment, is to stick to those basic boundaries and examples. I also have a main boundary myself personally. You can adopt this if you want, but it filters out a lot of different women. But one of my biggest boundaries personally is that I do not do flings of any kind. And any flings with me will not be tolerated. If she participates in the kind of behavior like most modern women do, where she's being sneaky, or she's trying to talk to other guys in front of me, or flirting with other guys in front of me, I'm not going to get angry. I'm not going to get upset. I'm not going to get super jealous. But she should know that she's crossing a line. This is not how we're going to proceed in the relationship if that's going to be the case. And sometimes, men, it's best that you don't just say your boundary, you demonstrate it through your actions. Otherwise, a woman won't, she'll take it for granted. And that's exactly one of the principles that you do not want to break. Now, as far as overcoming alcohol addictions and such, now I myself, in the past few years, I've never really been an alcohol person. I don't really like alcohol. I don't like it very much. I did have a minor in possession charge when I was 19 years old, 20 years old, because I was drinking in the dorms at my college. And we got called out by someone in the room. I have a feeling to this day this person has not owned up to who called the cops on us. I have an idea of who it was, because she didn't like me. She didn't like me, and she didn't really like the fact that I was enjoying my time with other people. And that's kind of beside the point, but all in all, that experience itself just really turned me off to alcohol overall. Like, I only had half a beer at the time before the cops came in. I had half a Corona, and it ended up costing me like $1,400 between all the fees and everything and all that stuff. Most expensive beer I've ever had. And ever since then, I just haven't really had the stomach to really like alcohol. and it just kind of pissed me off. And I don't even like feeling numb anyway. Like I don't like feeling like when you drink alcohol, you kind of get numb. You kind of get this feeling of numbness, and it's just not really fun. Like it's not a fun thing to experience. It's not I don't know. I just can't think straight. Your inhibitions get just thrown out the window. You don't have a filter. Like you can't think straight. It's just, I don't see the point in having any fun with it. I really don't. And I mean, Jesus drank wine in the Bible. I mean, in fact, he made water into wine. So there's obviously some kind of thing about, it's okay to drink a few times a year or whatnot. But as for getting drunk all the time, nah, that's not me. That's not, and I don't want to be around anybody that does that anyway, because most of the time they're impulsive. Most of the time, these people that drink often are angry about something in their lives, even though they don't really want to admit it. And the way to overcome this alcohol addiction, from what I've seen and what I've talked about with people, I never really had an addiction with alcohol. Even to this day, the last time I drank anything was January, February this year, and I had a glass of wine. But I would say to wane off of it, and this goes for smoking anything like cigarettes or nicotine or vaping, you got to wane yourself off of it. And you've got to have the discipline to wane yourself off of it. And then you've got to have, the addiction of trying to put something in your mouth, getting that out of the way as well. Has anybody seen Fast and Furious? The Tokyo guy, where he eats chips all the time, and it's part of his habit because he used to smoke a lot, and now he just eats chips, and that's because he has to have that hand to mouth addiction, and so he eats like these chips instead of smoking, which is a better alternative, but still, don't want to be eating chips all the time. But as far as alcohol, you've got to just wane yourself off of it. And that's easier said than done. I understand. I get it. But waning yourself off of any of these kinds of substances is going to help. And for me, when I was smoking weed, because I smoked weed almost every day for 2 years, and finally, the last time I smoked was last July in 2022, and that was the last time I've ever smoked in Oregon, and I just didn't really, God was showing me that this was it. I need to, it's served its purpose, and I genuinely think that marijuana has a purpose in society. I think it can heal, but I think when that time comes where you need to let go of it, it's time to let go. And fortunately, I was able to just let go of it. I had no problem with trying to go back to it. I threw it all away. I threw everything away. And I genuinely believe that if it wasn't for being on semen retention for a few months prior to that, because I started semen retention in May last year, so it was May, June, July. So it was 2 months of retention before I quit smoking completely. And I genuinely believe that if it wasn't for semen retention and having the discipline with my sexual impulse, that's the way to transcend a lot of these addictions. Because when you're on semen retention, what you're doing is you're disciplining your highest sex drive, your highest impulse, which is the sex drive, next to self-preservation. So really what I would say is, when it comes to that kind of thing, whether you're smoking cigarettes or anything like that, if you can, just try to stop altogether. Why do you need to go back to it? Why do you need to go back to the devil's playground? People often say oh, tomorrow I'll have the last one. Tomorrow is something that's always arriving but never is here. Right? So why don't you stop now? Because now, like, here is now. So while you're here, why don't you just stop now? Why do you want to go back? And one of the other ways that you can overcome these addictions is understanding the root cause. It's not necessarily the addiction to PMO or to alcohol or to drugs itself. It's what is the emotional attachment that you're trying to place onto these things. That's what you need to figure out. That's what you need to be honest with yourself about. And if you relapse on any of these things, don't get upset with yourself. Don't beat yourself up, because that's not going to help anything. Learn from it, learn why you relapsed, and then learn why you don't need to do it ever again. It's really going to be as simple as that. So, when it comes to all of these kinds of addictions, what you really want to focus on is understanding the root cause of the addiction. Because even if you're addicted to sex, or sexual attention, that is, what is the root cause of that? Why are you longing for the attention of the opposite gender? And this goes for both men and women. Why are you longing for that other gender to look at you? What is the root cause of that? Oftentimes, it's neglect or some kind of emotional attachment that you didn't receive properly when you were a child. A lot of these women out here, these modern day women, a lot of them have the Jezebel spirit, and I genuinely believe that a lot of the times where people are demonically possessed, that's also where they have some kind of form of mental disorder, whether it's borderline personality disorder or narcissistic personality disorder, bipolar, etc. I really, and I mean, this sounds kind of cruel, but I'm wondering how many people in our society have tricked themselves into having a disorder that they didn't really have, because they just wanted to go in with the pathologies of our society through all this talk of depression and anxiety and blah, 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 blah. If you're depressed, that means you're not moving enough. You got to do something. If you have a lot of anxiety, that means you're doing too much, or you're thinking about too much. You got to calm down. And the way that you can do that is through meditation, because you've got to calm down your nervous system. That's really what semen retention also does, is it calms down your nervous system. Because you're reforming a connection with your psychophysiological structure. And a lot of the times, when you have broken that connection to your psychophysiological structure and your nervous system, you've participated in overstimulating or understimulating the nervous system. And so people that are depressed need to do more shit. And people that have anxiety need to calm down. They just need to calm down, man. Well, anyway, I hope this video was useful and insightful. And I'm going to enjoy the river here for another few minutes and enjoy the warm weather we've had. It's warm considering there's no snow anymore. Snow's melted a little bit. And, it's 40 degrees, but for us, that's been warm here where I'm at. So, anyway, peace be with you. Till next time.